Those quick pre-made meals were still mostly recognizable, and perhaps the best example of this is also the most universal. Cheese. Cheese making, which began 10,000 years ago, was originally about survival for a farm family or community, taking a very perishable protein and transforming it into something less perishable, so that there would be something to eat at a later date. Processed cheese, which was invented 107 years ago in Switzerland, is basically cheese that is emulsified and cooked, rendering it much less perishable, but also no longer a living food, because unlike natural cheese, processed cheese's flavor will no longer alter with age. But big American cheese producers, as part of our factory scale, go big or go home philosophy of food production, bought into processed cheese so heavily that the very definition of American cheese has come to be a processed product. And the most iconic of them all? Well, I may be biased, but for me, it's that blue box of Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Okay, boys, come and get it.
Kraft home-cooked dinners, the quick kind you cook up fresh.
Hitting the store shelves in 1937, the box promised to feed a family of 4 for just 19 cents. And while launching a new product during the Great Depression was certainly a gamble, the product was wildly successful, selling 8 million boxes in the first year. Food rationing during World War II kept the product's popularity soaring. 2 boxes of a Kraft dinner could be purchased for 1 rationing coupon. In the 1950s, the fan favorite only had 6 ingredients, with sharp cheddar and skim milk being the most predominant. However, real cheese is also real expensive. So in the 1980s, while cheese was still a predominant but lesser ingredient, buttermilk powder was added to compensate. This still gave the nostalgic meal its creamy, cheesy taste that, as a kid in the 1990s, I loved. However, fast forward to the 2000s, both of those items have largely disappeared, while the ingredients list has gotten longer and more chemical. But I don't want to single out Kraft too much here, because today our grocery store shelves are stocked with all kinds of near cheese items, from Easy Cheese to Velveeta, again, that type of processed cheese when it was invented in 1918, now a dairy-based processed food with 22 ingredients that is no longer regulated as cheese, but rather a pasteurized prepared cheese product. To their credit, the FDA has established SOIs, or Standards of Identity, for over 250 foods, defining their characteristics, ingredients, and sometimes production methods. For example, you can't just market yourself as a fruit jam if you don't include at least 45% fruit. And similarly, whole wheat bread must be made with 100% whole wheat flour. This again is why Velveeta was asked to not call themselves cheese any longer in the early 2000s. The homogeneous orange slime, which admittedly makes for a great queso, just really isn't cheese by the FDA's definition anymore. But while SOIs do help to thwart food fraud, they're not about preserving quality, heritage, or freshness, but rather consistency with consumer expectations. And that's where I think a trip across the pond is needed to explain this difference. In a few other videos, I've explored and explained the EU's adoption of the precautionary principle, meaning prove it safe first. And I'll drop links to both my video on beef and chicken in the description of this video if you would like to watch more. And to a significant degree, the precautionary principle has kept many of the food additives, chemicals, and preservatives out of the food that we consume here in Europe. There's a higher burden to bear on behalf of the manufacturers that the chemicals that they're using in foods are safe before entering the market, rather than discovering afterwards and removing it from the store shelves. However, the presence and power of protected foods and labels is something that I don't think gets enough attention. These labels not only protect a heritage of food culture, but help consumers to more easily recognize and prefer the real deal over imitation foods. According to the European Commission, a protected designation of origin is a legal label that establishes certain requirements for labeling traditional foods and wines. The idea is that something about a place's geography and climate just simply can't be replicated, and copying the name without producing the food properly can devalue the product. So, for example, Kalamata olive oil, PDO, is entirely produced in the region of Kalamata in Greece, using olive varieties from that area. Champagne can only come from the Champagne region of France. Feta is a traditional Greek cheese made from unpasteurized sheep or goat milk. It is not a generic name and must come from Greece if sold in the EU. Gouda cheese must come from a specific region of the Netherlands. Irish whiskey must be distilled and manufactured in Ireland. Black Forest ham from the Schwarzwald. Roquefort blue cheese from France. Bordeaux wine, Gorgonzola, Chianti. You get what I'm saying. But sadly, it is very difficult to protect these foods and their reputation from copycats